Well, this is just a part of all the information we have here about the Ghent altarpiece. It's a very big file which contains documents, letters, reports, photographs on the condition of the altarpiece and its life between about 1940 and today. These pictures document the condition in which the altarpiece was kept at the end of the Second World War. The Ghent altarpiece was taken away from Ghent at the beginning of the Second World War, and the idea was to take it to the Vatican, but it was much too late, and at the end it just ended up in the south of France, in Pau, in the Pyrenees, in a castle. And they was kept for a while, but later on in the war, the altarpiece was taken by the German army, taken away and taken to the castle of Neuschwanstein in Bavaria. Then at the very end of the war, it was taken to the salt mines of altarpiece in Austria. It was together with many masterpieces and treasures for the Nazi army, and they were kept, a lot of them, in crates, which you can see here piled up on each other, in wooden structures which are made into the mine. The relative humidity was around 70% and the temperature around 7 degrees centigrade, but very constant. If you look very carefully here at the back, you can see the central panel of the Ghent altarpiece covered with sheets of paper. And these pieces are there to consolidate the paint, which was extremely fragile after all the transports it went through. And for us, it's important to know which areas were particularly deteriorated during the Second World War, to know where eventually they could have been more damaged and had to be worked on a lot more in 1951. The German army had hidden bombs in the mines to have the whole lot explode in case of the defeat of the Nazi armies. And they had hidden these huge bombs into crates. And on these crates was written Marmer, Vorsicht, so marble, careful. But thankfully, the whole system was deactivated by the American army, together with the help of the local population, to be able to save the works of art. Here, there's an officer from the American army, together with the German restorer, Karl Sieber, examining here the picture of Adam, and which is actually in very good condition. And Sieber here took care of the works of art, and we know that he restored the Saint John the Baptist enthroned. Sieber is wearing traditional clothes of the miners working in the area. Then you see they are looking at other panels of the Ghent altarpiece and standing here having a cigarette. The altarpiece was officially given back to the Belgian government by the American armies, and here you have General Eisenhower at the presentation in the Royal Palace. And you can see here it's the center, the front of the paintings and the back of the paintings, which the paintings had been sewn through in Germany in the 19th century. They are presented here on the side to be visible and not mounted on the reverse yet. Now, after these official ceremonies, then the altarpiece was completely documented by Paul Koremans and his team at the Institute. So they made a lot of just normal photographs, also details, macro photographs, infrared photographs, X-radiographs, very full documentation to document very clearly the condition of the altarpiece when it came back from the salt mines. And only a few years later, Koremans, who regularly went to see the altarpiece in the church, signaled that really something had to be done about it. He managed to persuade the authorities that restoration was absolutely necessary. And this was all supervised by an international commission. Parts of the paintings were much more deteriorated than the others. And so they concentrated on these very overpainted and deteriorated areas. For example, the Adoration of the Lamb, which was covered with a lot of overpaint. The paintings were flaking off, and so they had to be consolidated very quickly before any other operation could be done. And here you see the system that was used for the consolidation was to apply a mix of warm beeswax and resin onto the surface with a brush. You can see here some wax being melted with a metal spatula which had been heated into hot water previously. And then the surface of the painting were warmed up with infrared lamp so that the wax and resin could penetrate into the structure of the paint and consolidate the whole. And after that, only then could the surface be cleaned. Some of the panels were only superficially cleaned, like for example the reverse panels, only the wax and superficial dirt were taken off, but none of the old varnishes. And other areas, for example the central panel, is working with a microscope and a metal point to mechanically remove overpaint all around the dove at the top of the adoration. At the end of the treatment, this metal frame was also constructed so that the altarpiece could be safely put back into the chapel. You have to remember that in 1934, the left panel of the Just Judge had been stolen, and so there was a lot of focus on the safety of the altarpiece after it had been brought back. This publication is L'Agneau Mystique au Laboratoire, and it's a very complete report, if you like, on the restoration, but also on the study of the Ghent altarpiece, which was done in 1951 and published a bit later in 1953 under the direction of Paul Koremans. And it has different parts in it. It was just a very important publication because it shows the collaboration between different specialists, between the restorers, art historians, and then scientists from the laboratory. And every part actually uses information from the other disciplines. So on the history, the materials, the pre-study, the condition, the treatment, an essay on the vision and the technique of Van Eyck, on just very individual difficult issues. And there's even a study on the vegetation, on all the plants. But it's so incredibly dense that it's still very useful for us. We need to decipher it and find information everywhere because everything is summarized, put all together, and very, very complex. But we use then this as a reference now to look back onto the restoration and onto the analysis that was done at the time. It's a very important book also in general for our field because it's the first example of this kind of publications which are now very common in our work. But at the time it was really a visionary kind of publication.